The entitlement is real. This false sense of entitlement is real. You know, there is an old saying, and my mother used to tell me this all the time when I was a kid and I was complaining about whatever she was making for dinner that night. Beggars can't be choosers. If you don't like what I'm making for dinner, fine, go get something yourself. Oh, you can't go get something else because you can't drive and you don't have any money because you're a kid? So you can eat what I made. Or you can starve because beggars can't be choosers. I know dump divers in the WNBA along with their pretend friends at the worldwide leader in woke ESPN. I know they love tattoos. If you've ever watched a WNBA game, you don't know if you're watching a pretend basketball contest or an episode of Black Ink Crew on VH1. But since they love tattoos so much in the dump, they need to get that phrase tattooed on their arm so it serves as a constant reminder. Beggars can't be choosers. When you are a struggling league, when you're a league that's never turned a profit, when you're a league that counts revenue in cents instead of counting revenue in dollars, when you're a league that counts your fans by the dozens instead of by the hundreds or, God willing, the thousands, when you're a league that is known for huge embarrassing failure, you don't have the luxury of hand selecting your fan base. You don't have the luxury of setting standards and qualifications for your fan base. Ooh, girl, I want my fans to have the same standards as my mans, mansion, money, and the willingness to give me everything I want. Ooh, girl, that's why you're single and can't sell out high school gyms. Throughout the week, hell, throughout the season, we have seen WNBA players give every reason to people not to watch their product. Now, we have got the wanker spankers in the mainstream media openly telling people, do not watch the WNBA. Do not watch pretend basketball. Okay. If you haven't already, make sure to like and subscribe. You can follow me on Twitter at KC_BTL84. Just got my wife home from the hospital, so we should be back to normal tomorrow and hopefully to not talking about the WNBA. But how many of you guys have ever heard of David Doofus Jr.? Anyone? Anyone familiar with Captain Doofus? The Junior Doofus, he's a woke welfare collector at ESPN, which is extremely frustrating because ESPN announced yesterday that they were firing Zach Lowe. From what I understand, this was purely a financial decision. Zach Lowe, he is one of the top voices in the NBA, and guys like that command a top salary. I understand that ESPN is struggling. I understand that they're going through layoffs right now, but how in the hell is a professional like Zach Lowe getting laid off while you are still employing a bum like David Doofus? I know Zach Lowe was making millions and the Junior Doofus is probably making minimum wage, but ESPN has hundreds of woke welfare collectors like David Dennis Jr. on the payroll. Why are you getting rid of quality people when you could be taking out the garbage? Doesn't make sense to me, but what the hell do I know? My paychecks aren't coming from a non-binary mouse. David Doofus, he is the senior writer at Landscape. Now, this is the site owned by ESPN responsible for creating the landscape of mythical racism. Junior is also a panelist on Around the Horn, if Around the Horn is even on the air anymore. Since May of this year, Junior has accepted another identity. He has started identifying as a fan of the WNBA. Well, Casey, don't you mean he's identifying as a fan of Caitlin Clark? No. Davey doesn't like women who can actually play basketball. David Dennis is a big fan of the ladies who pretend to play basketball. Yesterday morning, hours after Caitlin Clark was eliminated from the playoffs and hours after the levels of panic reached all-time highs in the WNBA front office, David Dennis got on Twitter and he released his list of wishes that he's going to be sending Santa Claus here in a couple of months. I would assume several items on the list were included because Junior can't afford them on his minimum wage salary. So he is asking Santa for them instead. Items like food, more specifically the supersized cucumber. He requested a few bottles of Preparation H. He asked Santa for bus tickets so he could see his favorite dancer perform at Club Shay Shay, the dancing queen, Jackie Mahomes. Now, whether or not Santa delivers these items to David Doofus in a couple of months, that's anyone's guess. But the top item on the list, I can pretty much guarantee the top item on the list, it is going to be delivered immediately. Doofus won't have to wait 2 months to receive this. He won't have to wait 2 months to see this dream come true. Check it out for yourself. Dear Santa, it's me, David Doofus. I hope that Caitlin Clark fans will stop watching the WNBA. Donnie, I will rid the toxic dump of this toxicity. Oh, thank you, Santa, but my name is David. It doesn't matter what your name is. For starters, can you imagine if a white journalist in the PGA or something like that said the exact same thing about fans of Tiger Woods? Let's say Tiger Woods was eliminated on day one of the Masters. What would happen if Vern Lundquist said, I hope fans of Tiger Woods stop watching the PGA now. Woof, these people are so annoying. Vern Lundquist would be fired immediately. But when David Dennis says it about Caitlin Clark fans, it's perfectly fine. This has always been my problem with this. I don't give a shit that David Dennis doesn't like fans of Caitlin Clark. Hell, I don't give a shit about David Dennis. My problem is it doesn't go both ways. David Dennis can say whatever the hell he wants while people who lack melanin have to watch their mouth. Look at this from another perspective. David Dennis works at ESPN. Well, I shouldn't call it work. Work would mean that he actually contributes. David Dennis collects woke welfare from ESPN. Correct me if I'm wrong here. Isn't ESPN the proud home of the WNBA? Doesn't ESPN constantly brag about being the proud home of women's basketball? Doesn't ESPN constantly boast about showcasing women? Here at ESPN, we love women. We just hired Leah Thomas to model tuck-friendly bathing suits for our swimsuit edition. Here we have an employee at ESPN telling potential viewers of ESPN not to watch their network. Someone please make it make sense. Wouldn't ESPN want their employees promoting leagues that they are paying billions of dollars to broadcast? Or in the case of the WNBA, they are paying dozens of pesos to broadcast? Wouldn't ESPN want their people giving viewers a reason to watch their programming instead of giving them every reason not to watch it? People don't need another reason to not watch the dump. This league does a good enough job on its own convincing people not to watch their product. The last thing they need is their media partners telling people not to bother. People like David Doofus, they are one of the many things that frustrate me with ESPN. The quality of the network, it has drastically declined in the last 5 to 10 years. Just look at Around the Horn, the show that Captain Doofus is on. Around the Horn used to feature these people called journalists, reporters. These were people who were actually knowledgeable because they covered sports for a living. Woody Page, Jay Mariotti, Tim Kalishaw, Jackie McMullen, Bob Ryan. Today, Around the Horn features people who check woke boxes instead of checking box scores. Courtney Cronin, Monica McDougal, Sarah Spain. And who? Who in the hell are these people? ESPN thought Sarah Spain was qualified because she auctioned herself off as a date for the Super Bowl. My inside sources tell me that the auction was actually done for charity. Unfortunately, though, since Sarah Spain was the only date auctioned off, the charity raised $0. Elle Duncan's a regular on Around the Horn. Elle Duncan is a host. She's not an expert or a journalist. She is supposed to be hosting the show. Elle Duncan isn't supposed to be one of the experts reporting on what's going on. ESPN doesn't mind keeping people like this. ESPN doesn't mind keeping David Doofus on the payroll, but real experts like Zach Lowe, they can't seem to find room in the budget for him. And look, I don't think Zach Lowe will be the last to go. We have already seen ESPN let go of Bob Griffin, the Trace, and Sam Ponder. There are rumors that Around the Horn is going to be canceled in the next few months. Thank God. Hopefully, ESPN will fire the rotating panel of huge embarrassing failures that have absolutely ruined the show. There will be more and more people losing their jobs at ESPN in the coming months. Why? Well, Casey, it's because ESPN's struggling financially. Yeah, that's part of it. Disney as a whole is struggling financially. But that's only part of the reason. I think ESPN is doing this to clear up money so they can break the bank for Stephen A. Smith. I'm seeing reports that Stevie could command $25 to $30 million a year. Now, I don't understand it, and this is nothing against Stephen A. Smith. Outside of the NBA, his knowledge of sports is minimal. But there's no doubt that Stephen A. Smith is the most well-known and the most entertaining personality at the network. But $25 million a year for a dude that's drawing 500,000 viewers? $30 million a year for Stevie? I mean, good for Stephen A. Smith if he can get it. I just don't see the value. But this is exactly what ESPN deserves for overpaying Pat McAfee. Now they're going to have to overpay Stevie because they overpaid Patty. I mean, this network is just an absolute disaster, but give me your thoughts on this. David Doofus tells people not to watch the WNBA. An employee at ESPN telling people not to watch their product. Somehow, he gets to keep his job. I'm actually going to do David Doofus a favor here. Just for you, Junior, Uncle KC, he will not be watching the WNBA dump. Also, is Stephen A. Smith worth $25-30 million a year? Is he that valuable to ESPN? Let me know. Sound off in the comments below. Like, subscribe, share the video. Appreciate your support. Best way to contact me is by email at btlkc84@gmail.com, and I'll see you guys tomorrow.